And now it is my pleasure to officially introduce our speaker for today, Chris Kessler.
Thanks, Jacob.
Of course. Chris is responsible for leading North America's commercial accounts new business sales organization for Dice. He's focused on their go-to market strategy and accelerating sales growth through sales processes, new offerings, and pipeline expansion, while building upon their channel partner relations in the market. Thank you again for joining us today, Chris. And I know myself, as well as the audience, is excited to learn a little bit more about U.S. tech hiring. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it off and let you handle this presentation. Thanks again, Chris.
Thanks, Jacob. I appreciate it. So I will start off with saying I apologize if my dogs happen to bark in the background because we are in a global pandemic and we are working from home today. So I'll kick this off with, this is going to be more about thought leadership. That we're definitely not going to pitch anything as it pertains to my company. I would just want to share with you some of the data that we've collected. So we're going to go through the digital job capacity. We'll talk about the state of the U.S. tech hiring. How has COVID-19 shifted the mindset and how technologists view remote work. So we'll kick it off with, I'll start with a vision of our company is to create an indispensable market or an indispensable career marketplace to match the highest quality candidates with right career opportunities. So as you can imagine, in order to do something like this, we have to have great technology, but more importantly, we have to have great research so that we understand what's going on in the marketplace today. And when we look at the critical building of high performance organizations and what's going to happen between 2020 and 2025, we see 149 million new jobs by 2025 being created in the technology space. 1 million of those are going to be in privacy and trust, 6 million cybersecurity, 20 million data analysts and machine learning. Cloud and data roles will increase by 23 million. And we see software development increasing by another 98 million. A lot of jobs to open up over the next 5 years based off of what we're seeing and where the trends are today. And I want to talk a little bit about what the technologists are looking for and what the state of the U.S. tech hiring is today. Dice publishes a jobs report, and we published two this year, but I'm going to talk specifically about the tech hiring report in Q2 that we put out and share some data points that we found as we were doing the research. We'll start with comparing it to Q1. Q1 was extremely strong with the total jobs. And if you think about what we were coming off of, we came off of 2019 was the year that marked the lowest unemployment for all occupations, and specifically for tech. And when you think about a lot of things that transpired just in a few months, these slides will tell a really great story for us. In Q2 and Q3, specifically right around March, mid-March, April, we saw a significant drop-off. That's when the global pandemic really hit hard here in the U.S., and it started to show declines and stabilization started to follow as we were coming into July and August. And then we looked at the data week over week to really study this, starting in early May through the end of August. And you can see how we had some increases through May, and then it stayed steady through June and started to fall off as we came into the later months or come into the month of July. And then it started to stabilize with an increase and stabilize coming out of July into August. And now we're starting to see trends increase week over week. So when we look at the unemployment, as I mentioned before, we came off the lowest unemployment rate in 2019, and we had some spikes to nearly 17% or 16, 17% at certain points. This takes us through July, where we see the spike. It was around 15% in April, which was the highest, dropped down May and June, and then dropped down a little bit more in July. When we look at the overall occupations versus the tech was in 2019 around 1.7 to 2%. It would fluctuate up and down. So we see in March, we were just slightly over 2%, and it nearly doubled in April and steadily increased through July. And when we really drill down into this, what we see is tech still has the lowest unemployment. And when you drill down into the skill sets specific, the unemployment even drops more dramatically. And when we think about how the mindset has shifted, we did some surveys wherein we asked, how much has your work increased due to COVID-19 pandemic? And the majority of the technologists have seen an increase in workload. But what you really see here in this slide is that it's maintained, and it's only really increased about 33%, and 65% have not noticed an incline in workload. Another question that we asked was, has the COVID-19 pandemic changed what you think is more important in a job? We have a couple of things here, but I'm going to really focus in on the remote work, the job security and stability, COVID-19 response, and the company leadership, the first four. For years, technologists have sought to work from home, and the global pandemic has really transitioned the digitization and the work from home environment much faster than what a lot of employees wanted. And with this, it also brought uncertainty into the security and stability that technologists were feeling. And when you think back to the unemployment where it doubled, technologists are now fearing a little bit more uncertainty within their job. And leadership plays a huge role in making them feel a little more at ease and more comfortable, and how leadership responded to the COVID-19. Remote work is at an all-time high right now, not just for technologists, but for everybody. So for years, technologists have always wanted to work from home, as I stated before, and or have flex policies. And the pandemic has really opened that up, and it's done so overnight, pretty much, with the remote work. And we asked some of the technologists that were surveyed, how much do they like working from home? And no surprise that they like working from home a lot. We also ask a question, is a significant number of employees working remotely a detriment to the company culture? And the technologists that were surveyed do not perceive this to be a detriment to the company culture. And when we think back to what companies have told us for years, is that their worries were about the activity levels, and about the culture. And what we're seeing is work from home environment can sustain a truly great culture still. And on this chart, you see we ask the question, what are the main professional benefits you receive from working from home remotely versus in the office? 50% of the technologists listed productivity as a main benefit in this, and being able to be more productive and more relaxed, easier to work from home. They've also indicated that it gives a better work-life balance. On this chart, we see a question, what are the main personal benefits you receive from working from home versus working in the office? Saving money, comfort, control were the top personal benefits on this. A lot of the saving of the money was attributed to commute. And then you see the easier commute. If you're in your home office, it's much easier to commute, obviously, and more comfortable attire. I chuckle when I see the more comfortable attire, but the saving on commute, especially when you're commuting into busier cities, it's a saving of time and money for the technologists. So on this chart, we're looking at a question, what are the professional and personal cons of working from home? So we wanted to see where the distractions would come in. And during the time when we took the survey, it was during the summer months, so kids were home from school. So distractions and increased workloads were the top negatives. We believe that because of the timing of the survey, the distractions were probably higher for those that have kids. And we also believe that the team meetings have probably increased significantly for many of the technologists. Here we have a slide on how technologists view remote work. When we look at this, we see that less than 20% of the technologists prefer to work in an office 100% of the time. What this really tells me, when you look at anybody that's familiar with the top two box, is that most of the technologists would prefer to have a flex remote schedule wherein they can work from home and have some office, because there's times when you need to collaborate, and the best way to collaborate often is in the office. And then we see a slight drop in wherein 100% of the technologists would like to work from home. So I went through a lot of data there. I'm going to open it up for questions that you may have. And we can take the next 15 to 30 minutes and do some Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Chris. One quick question I had is, it's the top of everyone's mind, right? This whole COVID situation. And a lot of your slides even some of the slides showing the different trends over the last few months. We can definitely see, as you said, the impact COVID has had just on the industry as a whole, and especially in the whole, viewpoint of technologists, right? I guess my question to you is, how do you think the next 6 to 12 months are going to be as we slowly transition to what we believe was the norm before? But I mean, as we all know, life is unpredictable. So who knows what's going to happen next month, right? But I guess I'm curious on your thoughts on the whole, the whole world of U.S. tech hiring with COVID over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. So we never know what's what's going to happen tomorrow with the pandemic. It's a global pandemic, and everybody's impacted by it. I think with what we're seeing with a lot of the schools being remote, we're going to see a lot of flex schedules wherein parents can be at home with their children. We're also going to see with offices, depending on where they're located. Some have smaller office space, especially if they're in New York City. Some places in Silicon Valley, San Diego, et cetera, will have smaller office space. So there's fewer people that can come into the office. So I believe that we're going to see a flex work schedule for the remainder of this year for sure. And I foresee it going into 2021 as well until we have this a little bit more under control. So the remote hiring, I think, is something that has to be considered. And I think that more companies are opening their minds to it now that they've had the opportunity to have their technologists and teams work from home. And companies that we talked to have indicated that they've maintained activity levels and culture, and that they're seeing increased productivity. So the increase in productivity is a key factor in that. When you can have more productive technologists, you can drive your business forward at a greater speed with more efficiencies.
One other thing that I thought was interesting, if you could actually go to your previous slide.
Which one do you want to go to?
This one, the how technologists view remote work. Exactly. Now, when you were sharing these numbers, I thought it was pretty interesting, right? Because such a low percentage, want to be in the office all the time. When I read this, I think, hey, people like choices, right? So that's essentially why, the flexibility of working part-time, remotely or in the office kind of works out. I know that's the one I would choose. But I guess I'm curious on your thoughts of I know this is specifically focused on technologists, but do you think there's a similar trend to what we see on your screen with all the other industries around the world? It's probably very specific based on the industry, of course, but at the end of the day, I've got a lot of friends that are either in marketing or sales and in just a wide range of different industries, and I feel like this kind of description is similar to their thoughts, even when they're not in the whole industry related to directly to technology or software.
So I can share what we're seeing within our organization.
Yeah.
And prior to joining DICE, I spent 10 years at a very large human capital management firm. And we did a lot of studies on this. Remote work environment is and has been at the forefront for a long time. Technologists have been driving that, and when they're seeking employment, many are looking for those that are offering remote and or flex, and they will not consider companies that do not offer at a minimum of flex. What I'm seeing, and from what I've read, many of the other outside occupations outside of technologists are looking for the same thing. And a lot of the organizations and companies across the globe are reducing their office space and setting up work from home environments. ADP was a company that I'm very familiar with. They had many of their jobs work from home, from client success to implementation, and they were able to save millions of dollars a year doing it. And they're not alone. When you look at Google, technology company, but they're looking at 50% of their workforce being able to go remote. I believe we saw something on Twitter not too long ago where 100% of their workforce was going to be remote. So I do believe that the remote environment is not just for technologists.
Yeah, I agree. Great. And as a reminder for all of those attending the session, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in right in the discussion or questions tab to the right. If you have any questions that that come up in your head after this session, feel free to reach out directly to me at jacob.j@cpal.com or Chris. If you go to your next slide, just want to make sure everyone, there you go, chris.kessler@dice.com. Feel free to follow up for either of us, and we'll happily answer any questions or concerns you guys have. And as a reminder as well, we will follow up with all the attendees with a recording of today's session, just so you can sit back and rewatch if you're interested in the content again. But with that, I'll pass it over to Chris again for any closing remarks.
Yeah, closing remarks would just be, when you're recruiting technologists, keep an open mind. Be open to what a flex or remote jobs can mean to your organization. Think about the diversity and the culture that it can bring to your organization. And it can be twofold. It can save the company money when you're thinking about having somebody that's remote versus in the office. On average, you can save probably about $10,000 a year based off of research, just off of a data engineer position. So productivity will increase based off of studies, and work-life balance definitely increases. So keep an open mind and explore all your options.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us today, Chris. All great insights. It's great to go and actually see some data behind some of the statements as well. So thank you again for joining our session today. For all these attendees as well, our closing session will begin at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Time, so in approximately 15-20 minutes from now. In the meantime, feel free to click the agenda tab on your left and listen in on some of the other presentations that are currently going on. But the last round of our event itself will begin right at 1:15 p.m., and I hope to see you all there. And thank you again, Chris. I really do appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you.